Hi, Year 5. We're nearly at the end of our PDL, so we've got one more session after this where we're going to be thinking about our big question. But we're thinking an awful lot about our community, and not just our local community, but our global community as well, because we are all in this together. We all live on the same planet, and we have to all make sure that we look after our planet together. Otherwise, it's not going to be around forever. So our theme today in our PDL is our spending and the impact that that has on the environment. Now, last week you thought a lot about fair trade, and you thought about spending and how that can impact individuals. So people who benefit from us buying products that are ethical products, like fair trade products. And then this week we're moving on to still thinking about our own spending habits, but how actually the way that we spend things, the way that we buy things, but also how we dispose of things is our responsibility, and how that can actually have a really big impact on the environment. So I'm going to show you a couple of videos. Now, I apologise for the first video. It is not very good quality. You can hear it, but it's not the best quality. So I'm just going to see if I can get it to work for you. Okay. Here we go. I need to change my screen. Sorry, bear with me one moment, guys. Okay, let's see if we can get this to work.
Every day you eat. 7 billion people around the world are doing the same.
Food is not only a source of energy, it's a big part of our way of life, our traditions, and culture. It brings joy and satisfaction into our lives. Just think about having your friends and family around you, sharing your favorite meal. And we all have our soft spots when it comes to food. Be it a bag of potato crisps, a prime ribeye steak, or a juicy passion fruit. By 2050, another 2 billion people will join the ranks of daily food consumers, and this poses some serious questions. Where will all this food come from? Will everyone have access to it? But most importantly, will you still be able to enjoy your favorite meals? We have all heard the tales of how modern ways of eating are bad for the planet, about the danger of losing biodiversity and altering food crops, about the amounts of water and land it takes to produce a single piece of meat, or how soon we will have more plastic in the ocean than fish. We get it. Our own world is in danger. But those are all big global problems, and you are just one person. But how much of a problem is really what you eat? Can your burger really be blamed for global warming? Well, the answer is yes. Your food choices matter a lot.
Okay, so let's just get rid of that one. And let me get back onto my whiteboard. Okay, excuse me. So that talked about lots of different things, actually. It was thinking about how our choices of what we choose to eat have an impact. Lots and lots of companies now are really pushing going vegan and plant-based foods. Now, we are not here to say that that's what you should do. Everybody has their own choices to make, and that's absolutely fine. What we're saying is that this is one of the considerations to make, is that actually, in order to produce 1 kilogram of beef, it takes a ridiculous amount of land and a ridiculous amount of water. Now, I myself do eat beef, so I'm certainly not making any judgments on this. But what I'm saying, what we want you to do is just be aware of the environmental impact that it has. So we're not going to go into too much detail on that one, but just having a think about the environmental issues that were talked about there. It talked about food miles and seasonality. So actually how far our food has to come. Now, when I go shopping, sometimes I will have a little look at the packaging and think, oh, that came all the way from Kenya. And actually, often it's things that could be grown locally. If I were to go to perhaps a local greengrocer's, they are much more inclined to buy things from the local area, which not only is really good for our carbon footprint because we're not actually adding to our carbon footprint, but also really good because it's contributing to our community, isn't it? It's giving people in our local community food, money for food and that sort of thing. So food miles and seasonality, that's another thing as well. Seasonality, it's choosing those foods that are in season. So if they're in season in our country, we're much more likely to be able to buy them locally. If they're not in season, then those products have to be shipped from another country, which obviously is damaging our planet, isn't it? So that's one way that we can have a think about it. Like I say, certainly not saying that you can't buy foods from other countries and you have to buy foods from your local greengrocers. It's just food for thought. Use of land and chemicals, not too worried about talking about that too much, but basically I talked about this with the group in school last week. Lots of products, in order to make bigger crops, produce bigger crops and more successful crops, a lot of companies rely on chemicals, pesticides. Whereas if you were to choose organic products, chemicals aren't used. But organic products are more expensive because of this, because they can't rely on those bigger bumper crops, which means that they're going to be paid more for their produce. So, you know, there's always a balance, isn't there? You've always got to look at it and say, right, well, environmentally, that's a more friendly option, but actually it does cost a bit more. So it's not something that we can necessarily do all the time. I'm going to skip past care for animals. Fair trade we've talked about. So let's just jump on to the thing that we're going to be really focusing on today, because this is the thing that I think we can all change, or certainly we can get even better at. Because I know that some of you are really good at this already. I'm sure your families do lots of these things already. So food waste and packaging. Okay, so let's have a little look at that one. So when we're talking about food waste and packaging, food waste, people often are buying more food than they need to. Now hopefully people are getting much better at planning their meals. I know certainly as a family we try to plan our meals ahead, so we're only buying the products that we know that we need for each meal, and so you don't then end up at the end of the week, this has gone off in the fridge, I'm going to have to throw this out. Shops have a massive obligation, and they actually some companies are not all that environmentally friendly because they actually get rid of so much food after its sell by date. So they're not looking for effective ways of selling those products before they actually go out of date. Lots and lots of companies now are actually looking at ways of getting food that is reaching its sell by date or has gone past it, gone past the best before date. Now, best before date just means that it would be better to eat it before that date. So any products that's gone past its best before date that they can't sell, they're actually looking for ways now to get those products to food banks, which is great, really great. Now, this last one is the thing we're really going to be thinking about, packaging. So packaging is obviously important to some extent. It's used to protect our food, but in other ways, it's perhaps used ineffectively to make our food look nice. Now, that isn't so crucial, isn't it? I think packaging that's used to protect food in transport, yes, but packaging that's just used to make things look nice, do we really need that? Products can look beautiful just on their own. Okay, so I'm going to show you a quick video now. This is the future of the oceans, and it's a Blue Planet video. So bear with me while I quickly get that working. Okay.
That was wrong.
I'm just going to rewind that to the beginning, sorry.
For you.
Okay, so just switch back to my screen. Okay, I think obviously that's quite clear what that was about. That's thinking about that we have to act now. We have to do something to make a change as a collective group. It can't just be one person. However, we are, if everybody does their bit, if everybody acts now, then we can make that difference. And I think there was something really lovely, that lady who said that we don't inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our grandchildren. Now, you guys are probably thinking, I'm not really interested in thinking about my grandchildren right now. Your children yourselves, but one day you will be adults, and one day you will think about actually your future children and their children, and you need to think now about how we're going to make a difference for those children. So what we're going to do today is we're going to have a think about writing a letter, an open letter. Now, an open letter is not aimed at any one particular person, it's aimed at everybody, which means that we can be we can talk about whatever we choose to talk about, but we do still have to be quite focused in what we're writing. So I'm going to show you some planning that we've got, okay, but let me start off by showing you this. So basically it's an open letter to persuade a consumer, a person who buys things, to choose food with less packaging and to carefully consider what they do with their food packaging. There's the two main aims of our letter, okay? Now, I'm going to just quickly talk you through some of the things that you might like to include in your letter. I have put this as a document, so I'm going to whiz through this really quickly because you can have a look at it. You can put it up on your screen after the video and you can have a look at it in more detail. All right, so just think really carefully about the headlines here. Avoid food wrapped in plastic. We've talked about that. So the UK alone produces more than 170 tonnes of waste every year, and much of it is food packaging. And like it says here, if you look in your bin right now, and it's not your fault, but if you look in your bin, you will probably find that there's lots and lots of food packaging. So that's something to really, really think about, whether you can actually consider products that have less food packaging, okay? Okay, so that's one thing to have a look at, and it's thinking about how when you're in the supermarkets, perhaps when your parents are in the supermarkets, whether you can actually look for products that do have less packaging. So I'm going to move on to this next one, which is shop local. And we talked about how actually you might be able to go to a greengrocers, and in greengrocers, local farmers market, they have so much less packaging. You don't go up to a stall and find everything pre-packed. You know, everything is loose, so you can then choose what you want and you can put it into your bags that you take with you, which moves us on to the next thing that we're thinking about. Take your own bags. Talked before about how it's really, really important to make sure that you use reusable bags, that you're not buying bags every time you go shopping. Thankfully now, recently, they have brought in a charge. So if you forget your bags, which you do, I did the other day, but it's really important to try really hard to remember to take your bags with you. So that's another point you could think about. Avoid single-use items, so try not to buy the plastic cutlery. I know it's great for parties and things, and you know, when you're tired at the end, you can just chuck it all in the bin. It's tempting, but if we're going to make a change, those are the sorts of things that we need to do, is try to avoid buying plastic cups, plastic straws. In fact, somebody said to me in school last week, why have we got lots of plastic cups? And I said, that's because sometimes people forget to bring their bottles, and so we provide them with a plastic cup. But ideally, we don't want to do that. We need to make sure that we've all got our bottles with us so that we can refill our bottles through the day. Not putting your food into foil and cling film, but actually putting them into reusable pots and things like that. So that's really important. We just said about getting your own reusable bottle. So plastic bottles can take up to 450 years to decompose. That is such a long time. So rather than buying an Evian bottle from the supermarket, try and make sure that you've got your bottle with you. And then the obvious one here that I know lots of you do, but perhaps we could all get better at. And I have to say, I've just made a sandwich for my lunch and my children's lunch. And I've just noticed that the bread package actually says it can be recycled, and I have always thrown it in the bin. So it's made me realise that perhaps I need to check the packaging a bit more carefully, and if something is recyclable, I need to just wash it out and make sure it goes into the recycling bin. So there might be more items at home that you could actually recycle. So have a little look. That's one little thing that you can do that could make a real difference. Okay, so let's have a think about our letter then. Now we're going to start to use this form of planning. Now I've done it for you today, or most of it for you today, but I'm going to just quickly talk you through how it works. Okay, so we start in the middle box here, and this middle box is thinking about our audience. and it's thinking about our letter. What is the purpose of our letter and who is our reader? Okay, now the purpose of this letter today is to inform our reader and to persuade them. We need to inform them that there's a problem and what the problem is, and we need to persuade them to do things different, to make a change. All right, and then the reader, our audience, is anyone who doesn't think about the environment when they're making spending decisions and disposing of their waste, or perhaps somebody who does but maybe could do more. So that's our reader and that's our purpose. So then we come on to our next box out. And our next box is, well, what effect do we want our letter, whatever our text is, but today we're writing a letter. So what effect do we want our letter to have on our reader? Well, we want to make them feel compelled to make a change. By the end of reading our letter, we want them to say, hang on a minute, I could do more and I'm going to do more. This is maybe one little change I'm going to make, or I could try and have a go at doing these two things. So we want to really make them feel compelled. They have to do something because they actually do understand what is happening to our oceans and the dangers to our environments. Okay, so how are we going to do that? Well, this is how we're going to do it. We've got three things here. We've got the green, the blue, and the red. Can you see that? So the first thing is we're going to use some emotional language. We're going to make them feel something. And in this case, we're going to make them feel guilty, horrible as it is. We need to. Sometimes we need to play on people's guilt. When I say upset, I don't want them to leave having read our letter feeling really upset and miserable, but upset about the situation, upset enough that they will want to make a change and determined that they are going to play their part. So that's what we want to get. We've got to use that emotional language that really makes them feel those things. We need to keep it quite formal, all right? We need to show that it's a serious letter. We're not joking about here. We need to make a change. We all have to work together to make a change. So in order to do that, we need to use that formal language. And we've done this before, guys. So this is just you applying what you know and using what you know, okay? And then the final thing down here, look in this box down here, technical words and phrases that show that you know your stuff. To convince somebody that they need to do something for you, you need to show them that you understand what you're talking about. Okay, so those are the three things that we need. That's our success criteria. So then we come out to our final box here. Okay, now you'll see that I've color coded. Hopefully it's clear enough. I probably should have used slightly different colors, but we've got the green here and we've got some ideas up here for the green. So thinking about that emotional language, making them feel something, we need to really think about the language that we're using in our letter. So things like, and you can use your own ideas or magpie these as well, things like sea creatures and animals dying needlessly. Okay, that dying needlessly, that's really emotive language, emotional language. It gets people thinking and feeling things. Packaging disposed of irresponsibly. So we're really kind of saying to people, you know, you're being irresponsible and you need to make a change by using that word irresponsibly. Right, we've got here threat to our oceans. That word threat, that really demonstrates that there is a problem and that actually our world is under threat and our oceans are under threat. And if you remember in the video, actually, it talked about how it's not our oceans. Actually, ultimately, it comes back on us, doesn't it? If our oceans are under threat and the sea life that dies in our oceans, that's us. That's then impacts on us and we will in turn, you know, suffer as a planet. And then the final thing to look at is we said about these technical words and phrases. So down here you can see that I've just picked out a few words that you might like to have a go at using. So to really show someone that you know what you're talking about, you want to be using the correct language and you need to be spelling it properly as well. So environment, packaging, consumer, recycle, dispose, responsible, irresponsible, global, climate change. I'm sure you can come up with loads more that you could include, but there's just a few ideas of things that you could have a go at doing. Now I've saved this as a separate file. So again, you can have it up on your screen or print it out if you do find it easier, but you don't need to. Remember, we are trying to think about ways to save our planet. Another thing that I've put on here, oh, sorry, I didn't tell you about this either, the formal language. So this is these words here, look, undoubtedly, nevertheless, surely, surely you can see the danger to our planet. You see how by adding that word surely, I'm like drawing my reader in. I'm trying to actually engage them in what I'm saying to them. I could structure it by thinking about firstly, furthermore, in addition. Now I've put a few ideas on there, but I've also given you this sheet here. All right, now this is some really, really good language, some sentence stems that you could use. I think for this reason, okay, we've got loads of things here. Some of them might not be relevant, but there's lots here, I think, lots of language here that I think is going to be really, really good for you to use. Without a doubt, this world will suffer if we do not act now, okay? It's all about the drama. You've got to add the drama into your letter, otherwise people are not going to act. Okay, so I thought we would just finish off by, I'm going to quickly do just a short bit of modelling of the writing for you so that you can see the sort of thing that we're looking for. Okay, now you will know from me in school that I am terrible at typing. I always make lots of spelling mistakes, so I anticipate there'll be lots of spelling mistakes in this and I'll have to go back. That's the way it is. Okay, so it's an open letter. I'm not saying dear sir or madam because I'm not directing it at one person, so I'm going to make it quite dramatic. A letter to the world. Okay, it's for everybody. Everybody across the world could make a change. Okay, now I noticed in the video, in both the videos that I've shown you, that they talked about how by 2050 there actually could be more plastic in the oceans than fish. I'm going to start with that. So by 2050 there could be more plastic in our oceans than fish. Okay, so I'm making a bold statement to start it off because I need people to realise how bad a situation this is. Okay, then I'm going to say, yet the problems begin long before plastic, whoops, let's move that over. Long before plastic reaches our oceans, let's go with rivers and beaches as well. Beaches. And so must the solutions. So the problems start long before they reach there. So actually it's not about let's all clear up the mess on the ocean, on the beaches. Actually what we're trying to say is we need to go back, way back to the source when these things are produced or when they're consumed. If we don't consume them, they won't be made that way. If we stop buying products that are wrapped in tons and tons of plastic, then people that produce those products will have to have a rethink. They won't produce them in that way any longer. Okay, so how about let's have a think about, right, so what I'm going to be doing, or what you're going to be doing, is you need to be thinking about all of these things. We want to say to people, avoid food wrapped in plastic. So these points that we need to make: avoid food wrapped in plastic, shop local if you can, take your own bags. So all of these things are really, really key points that you might like to include in your writing. Okay, so let's go back onto this. Okay, how about something like, people around the world are coming together to demand change. Well, that's quite an emotive word, isn't it? Demand. Yeah, it's really showing that something's got to happen. Many are beginning to change, whoops, there we go, the way, oh dear, look, I told you I'd made lots of change, lots of mistakes, the way they shop by considering more carefully, so considering with more care, the products that they are choosing and buying products with significantly, I'm going to put significantly less packaging. So can you see already I've got some language here that really shows that I know what I'm talking about. We've got packaging, we've got products. I'd like to use the word consumers at some point in this paragraph, I think. Now I'm not going to type any more, but Here we've got some emotive language. By 2050, there could be more plastic in our oceans than fish. I want to change my punctuation there because that is an moment to me. So I think it needs an exclamation. Okay, I'm not going to go any further, but I'm going to leave you. So I'm going to leave you now to really think about that because I know it's going to take you a while. So use my planning. Don't think that you have to start your whole planning from scratch. You can use my planning. You can add to it if you want to. So this planning here. Use this sheet here. It's got loads and loads of questions, sentence stems. So start your sentences with these. It will really help you. Use all of these ideas. So these are all on a document for you. Use those. Okay. Think about what was talked about in the videos, and have a go at writing a letter. Now, ideally, we'd love you to write a letter. It doesn't have to be a great long letter. All right. You might just choose 2 key points that you talk about. Remember the key things that we said as our aim of our letter is to try and encourage people to choose foods with less packaging and consider more carefully how they dispose of those. So, come back to that and think, oh, you might just have 2 paragraphs and have a go at writing that. Now, if you think, oh, I really can't do this, I think that's just too hard, that's okay. Because I know that some of you might not have anybody at home that can help you, and I know that makes it tricky, and we're not asking you to do something that is just too difficult. So if you look at that and think, I really can't do that, Mrs. Hall, then do me a poster. Show me a poster. I don't just want pictures, I do want some words on it. Try and use some of that emotional language if you can, and some of that technical language, but maybe just short phrases of things that people could do that might make a change. So ideally, you're going to have a go at doing the letter. Use my planning. If you want to do your own planning, that's absolutely fine, but you don't have to. And if you really can't do the letter, then have a go at doing a poster. All right? And we can't wait to see what you come up with. I'm going to leave you with this one. No one is too small to make a difference. Hope it goes well, guys. We're looking forward to seeing what you come up with on Tapestry.